Transformers: The Last Knight is the final film in the series directed by Michael Bay, and somehow has the dumbest plot of any entry so far. And that really is saying something. I'm pretty much convinced that Bay's just trolling the audience at this point. Let's get this over with. Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tara.
Greetings, citizens.
This is a science fiction movie podcast. We get together and we talk about a science fiction film that we've watched. It's really quite that simple. And today we are in the 5th entry of the Transformers franchise. We started working through them a few months ago. We have every other week for the past 2 months hit out the sequels so that we're all caught up for the new one coming out, and this is the final one. Bumblebee obviously came after this, but we already did that back right at the start of the show, so that's already done. We don't have to worry about that. So this is the final Transformers film before the new one that we have to do, and notably it's the only one that I hadn't seen before, so this was a maiden voyage for me on Transformers: The Last Knight. So we're going to get into it. We'll start spoiler free as we always do. We'll give you warning before we get into it. I don't really want to give a bit of a plot summary. I think most of it should just stay in the spoiler section. But needless to say, there's a bunch of King Arthur bollocks, as the poster and title would probably imply. So that's all you're getting from it, because so much of it's so goddamn dumb, I am saving it until I can rant about it properly. So we'll get straight into just the brass tacks. Tara, how do you feel about Transformers: The Last Knight?
I didn't enjoy it very much.
What?
I found it to be long and irritating and confusing. Way too much like happening at once. It's basically more of the same. Maybe slightly like less annoying than other ones. So it's probably like middle of the road, I guess, but I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy any of these. I wish these movies were different. I wish they were all different. I wish they just like, okay, like the last one was like, hey, we're going to have real historical events, and it turns out the Transformers were always like part of them, and we're retconning history.
I mean, what do you mean the fourth one? The third one had that too, and the second one kind of had that.
The last two had that, right? And so, like, okay, that's kind of a fun thing if you really like go for it. This one's like, well, what if we just say like fantasy is real, and then the fantasy stories, like myths, are also inspired by the Transformers, or like actually happen because they're Transformers. And it's like, okay, why don't you just give us those stories then? Like, why not just do a King Arthur story but with like Transformers? Like, just make it silly. Like, make these like episodes of the TV show, which probably weren't as silly as these, but like, why not just go for it?
This was already silly. Yeah, what are you talking about? This was, I mean, like, absurdly dumb.
Just tell the tale of King Arthur, but like, make that the movie.
I mean, no, like, honestly, even the second one kind of had this, because the second one opened with the dawn of time, Transformers were... Every single one of these sequels has opened with the Transformers were here during this part of history. Transformers 2, it was, Egypt. It was the dawn of time before the pyramids. Transformers 3, it was the moon landing. Transformers 4, it was...
The bubonic plague or something.
Dinosaurs and shit. Dinosaurs. Yeah, there was, yeah. And then this one, you've got, like, King Arthur stuff was all real.
But that's the thing, like, this is the first one where they're like, oh, the fantasy stuff, like, the myths is also part of history, and Transformers were there.
I really don't care. I do. The problem, the problem, there's not one problem. I shouldn't say such silly things. No, the problems with this are numerous, obviously, but it obviously there's the stupid stuff back, right? There's dumb characters, there's really immature humor. It presents itself in slightly different ways, but there's a lot of Michael Bay stuff in here. This one brings back some of the characters from the first three movies. Not all of them, obviously, but a few of the smaller ones in various roles. But fundamentally, the biggest thing that's wrong with this movie is that there is so much just insane plot going so quickly that I legitimately at points started to really struggle with like knowing which group of characters, like why they were doing certain things, what the motivation for certain groups were, what is the point
And
of
you're
entire
good at that.
sections.
That's why you do all the plot recap stuff for this. Like, I'm actually quite impressed by your ability to recall what happens in films for plot. Because I watch something and I'm like, well, it's gone. But good thing Peter was paying attention.
But I mean, no, I was genuinely struggling, and so basically, there's just too much going too quickly, and I'm not like, there's maybe like the tiniest slither of like a good concept here or there, right? And I
Yeah,
do
like all of them have that.
I do mean a tiniest slither. But the problem is that they're piling on so much. There's too many characters. Most of the characters, like the trailer for this, right? The trailer for this movie, because I remember the trailer vaguely well enough. And the two key things that stuck out to me in the trailer for this, the two things that it set up, is that Optimus is bad for some reason, right? That was number one. And number two, it presented as if we had a new main character who was this sort of like teenage girl who was like a scrappy like sort of kid who's going to help the Autobots, right? Both of those elements in this movie are so tiny compared to what it felt like they were going to be based on the trailer. And even just like the entire opening 20 minutes, half hour of this movie is largely setting up this teenage kid and her sort of new friendship with Mark Wahlberg's character. And then she just disappears for 2 hours and it has like a little bit near the end. And that's kind of it. Optimus Prime, they set up early on, oh, he's going to be turned evil by something. We'll get into it all in spoilers, what's going on. And then there's a big gap with no Optimus, and then he finally makes his appearance, and the entire thing is resolved in about 5 minutes.
He's like the evil Superman in Justice League. He's like, oh, you're going to get evil Superman for like 30 seconds.
Even just in the context of its own movie, of like what it sets up and how long it takes building to something, it's so underwhelming how quickly it's just like, oh, and now it's over, on to the next thing. It's for a movie that's 2.5 hours long, and this kind of goes for all of them to an extent, but I really felt it with this one. For a movie that's 2.5 hours long, it speeds through so much plot so quick, and much like the last few movies, it ends so abruptly where Optimus has a little speech and then like it's almost a jump scare when the directed by Michael Bay credit pops on the screen.
Yeah. And we always say that Peter Cullen has a great voice.
He does.
It's always welcomed when we hear Optimus with his voice. But at this point, 5 movies in, I'm like, okay, yeah, I am Optimus Prime. Like, how many times are you going to say it and then I have to be like impressed by? Because is that like the only line you have every single time?
Well, he's got a couple of speeches. The problem I had though, his speeches just because the whole thing's so incoherent and like the ideas are so unfocused. Like when it gets to some speeches, I just like the movie's not set up why you're making this speech, and your speech doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
The little Star Trek Picard, which by the way we have an actor from Star Trek Picard
we
in there.
Rios is in there.
Cristobal.
Yeah, Josh Duhamel's back as well from the first bunch of movies. Stanley Tucci's back, but not as the character he played in the last movie. He's playing Merlin in the flashback stuff. Historically
accurate Merlin. I'm glad you're an expert about King Arthur and all that.
No,
you're from the UK.
No,
so
I am definitely not.
It would be very helpful for me.
I'm not sure how to tackle what you just said, because some dumb people will actually think King Arthur's like a real bit of history or something. Like that. I mean, honestly, his Merlin at the start of the movie was the first like, oh no, some of this comedy, like because he's a comedy character. His Merlin is played for laughs the entire time. Yeah. So we'll get into that. Like John Turturro's actually back in this. It's a really small role. It's practically just an extended cameo.
It's like it's a cameo basically.
But like he's there. Our general Glenn Morshower's back in his general role.
It is very general.
It's what he does. It's what he was in the first 3. He's back again.
Yep, he's looking at screens. He's pointing at people.
He's saying, I need authorization for the tactical nuke. That's like the one line I think he said that I remember.
Very good.
But our new characters, there's two, well, other than the teenage girl who I already mentioned, there's two prominent new characters. There's Anthony Hopkins, and we can't talk about what his role is. It's all spoilers, but it's like I burst out laughing in a delirious, like, help me, please, some higher being help me from this movie.
I'm glad you got some enjoyment out of this.
All right. It wasn't good laugh though. It was like I'm having a nervous breakdown laugh with like his stuff. And then the other,
this all, man.
The other addition is our sexy love interest for this movie. Is some like posh
pretty British lady,
English professor lady who's like, I don't know. She's from a rich family. She's a professor at Oxford.
She plays polo.
She plays polo. Yeah.
How posh, how very rich of her.
That's basically That's basically all I've got for you. She was at least in her 30s at the start of this movie, which, you know, is. But
are we sure about that?
Yeah, I think so. I looked her up because I was curious because I just assumed there was a big age gap between her and Wahlberg. She's 37 just now, so she would have been like 31.
Well, Wahlberg's like what, 50?
Yeah, but but the point I'm making is she was at least in her 30s when they made this.
Okay.
But yes, it did cross my mind at one point that they introduced her, and it's clear they're sort of introducing her as the potential love interest for Mark Wahlberg. And I thought, she seems closer to your daughter's age than she does your age. I'm just gonna put that out there.
Yes.
I was kind of see when she went to Oxford early on, I thought she was going as a student. And then she puts on some glasses and she's like, oh, she's a professor. Okay.
Yes, I also thought the same thing.
I genuinely thought that. And then I was like, oh, okay, all right. She's got a proper job, a very prestigious job. Therefore, she is an adult.
A smart adult.
Smart
and sexy.
I mean, yes.
You have to be, though, if you want to be in a Michael Bay movie.
Well, that's the whole thing. She's the sexy teacher, right? That's what they're going for.
Yeah.
Which, by the way,
can't get a date.
all of the flirting between her and Wahlberg is like really forced and like awkward. It's all this like there's just sort of like thrown into innuendo, and they're just like sniping lines backwards and forwards at each other, like really quickly and talking over.
It's just like Sam Witwicky's parents. It's so adorable. All you have to do is just accidentally say the things that make people think of other things, and that's where the magic happens. That's where the sparks are. The all sparks, if you will.
Excellent point, Tara. I heard it all. All of it. But yes.
Yeah. Everything I said was was quite good.
Their romance is just, it's just this forced thing. But honestly, the two big problems are just how messy and insane the plot is, and how stupid it just starts like retconning things and like saying all these big wacky ideas. Because at this point, like we've been saying, all the sequels have done this thing where Transformers were secretly already here for something in the past. This movie takes that and like turns it up to not even 11. It turns it up to like 55 or something. Like it's Mark Wahlberg's age. It turns it up to Mark Wahlberg's age. That is what it does.
Say hi to your mother for me.
He has the age that he should be dating people's mothers. I mean, that's fair. But like, so you've got that problem, and then you've got this just insane pacing where absolutely nothing is allowed to breathe, and you've got the quick cuts during like all the exposition scenes as well as the action scenes, so everything is just firing so quickly. And Anthony Hopkins is spouting some of the most insane exposition that's been uttered in these movies, and that's saying something because this franchise has had like really dodgy, absurd exposition that we're just like the characters just take at face value very quickly. This movie turns that up again. Like all of it is just turned up. Like, is it the worst one? Probably not, because Revenge of the Fallen still exists. But I think the plot in this is the dumbest. I think this is the dumbest, most. They just did not care anymore. It's just nonsense. And the worst thing about it is that in a weird way, it feels like it's regressed and is focused less on the Transformers than it was the last couple of movies. Like I felt like there was whole
Yeah,
points here
again,
where
they're gone for like so much of the
yeah,
film.
it just ignores them, and we follow the human quest, which we'll get.
Yeah. It's
So no,
annoying. It's an annoying franchise, you know, because it's not like there's not good in them. There is. Like I can see the good stuff that's there, the bones of a movie in a director who had like rules he had to follow, or like or someone or just someone else, I guess. You know, like Transformers are cool and they could make fun superhero movies, but they're just they're so messy, and like everything is super horny, but like not in a fun way. It's always in like a gross way or like a cringe way, or you know, or and then there's like the kid aspect of this too, and it's like, well, why is this stuff all mixed together in the same film? Like I hate that. And
yeah,
like
honestly,
you're right,
see,
it's so plotty, especially like things happen so quickly that if you do like take a second and look at your phone and you go back up and you're like, wait, why are these two characters together all of a sudden?
yeah,
Weren't they with this other group?
why
And
is this one fighting this one? What you know? Yeah, why are they chasing them? Like, there's a
wait,
lot of
what
stuff
happened to
like
the
that.
other people that were with them, or the other Transformers that were there?
Hon-
Should
hon-
they be here for this? Like,
Honestly, when the movie was starting and it was like, okay, we've got this scrappy kid and she's like befriending Autobots, I was like, you know what? This actually seems like an interesting pivot, right? Give me like a younger character who's got a bit more heart and can,
yeah, and she's decent. Like she's a
yeah.
decent little actress. I enjoyed watching her, you know,
Eh,
interactions, and she's good with special effects
yeah,
acting.
I guess in some way it's kind of what Bumblebee ended up becoming, but just give me
Yeah.
like a simpler, more innocent character who can like bond with the Autobots and like help them out. Like I felt like this is an interesting pivot, but then of course it doesn't stick to that. In fact, not only does it not stick to that, it abandons it completely after like another 15 minutes.
And not just that, but like even in the scenes where like she's like doing stuff and being, you know, being scrappy and fun to watch, then like other kids are there to be like to get horny on her. Like what is this? Like I don't want this in here. Like this is gross. Like sure, I guess you know 14-year-olds can be like attracted to each other or something, but like I don't know. Like it's just uncomfortable, and I don't want
I
to
mean,
watch that.
I
It's
wouldn't.
just like a little
Hold on,
reminder of, oh yeah, it's a Michael Bay movie. It's gonna be stupid.
hold on. I wouldn't describe them as acting horny. I mean, I suppose you could sum it up that way because it is. It's like the other kid wants to date her. He's clearly attracted to her, but at the very least,
Yeah.
there's no sex jokes made or any
No,
innuendos made.
he's just like a young Sam Witwicky seeing a young Megan Fox or
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
you know?
But
They're just like a couple years younger from the first film.
but he just kind of like he's clearly into her, and then he says like, what's that Autobot? And she's like, as far as you're concerned, my boyfriend. And he's like, oh, how long's that been going on? Like it's dumb, it's stupid, and it's not funny. There's no charm to it.
No.
And but I feel like there easily could be like you can see
Yeah,
that
if this was like a losers club, you know, like I'll find living off like this wasteland where there's Transformers and like other things happening, you know, they have to be scrappy and industrious. Like, I don't know, that could be an interesting film.
no, but even like the attraction part of it, like it could easily be quite charming having a kid have a crush on the other kid.
Oh yeah,
And
totally.
like
Yeah.
I can easily see how that would work. It's just it doesn't because it's in the Michael Bay lens of like the only way he knows how to like handle, and he's not even writing the script, but somehow all of his scripts are curated for his taste. Is that the only way he can show it is like have like the guy stare at the girl, and because even Wahlberg and like, the love interest, even though they don't start off that way, there is a moment like really, and it's really weird, like quite early on in their back and forth, where she comes in wearing a dress. And he says something about how, I don't know, he says something that's inappropriate, or like, really, you're wearing the fancy like evening gown dress when we're doing this stuff. And she's like, well, if it bothers you so much, maybe I should take it off. Which I thought was a weird line as well, because I'm like, that's like bait. You're baiting him with that line almost, to make a pervy comment. And he just goes, yeah. And I don't know, it just like the whole interaction felt off. It felt like this is dialogue written by a 12-year-old boy who is really horny.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. Dear. And it's honestly the least of this movie's problems, but it's it's still there.
That's true.
It's been this thing consistent through all of them. It's been up and down in each movie depending on the last movie. Well, the last movie kind of had the worst of it, but in a weird way, it kind of had the least of it as well because the main character and the main chick, if you will, were father and daughter. So while there was some dumb boyfriend stuff, but the boyfriend character, for the most part, it didn't delve into dumb attraction shit in the same way that a lot of the other ones have. But obviously, those first ones with Witwicky and him like lusting after the hot babes, and then this has a couple of different examples of it.
Yeah.
But I'll just say it right here. The running gag that so what's her main chick's name? She is Vivian. Oh yes, because Optimus kept going, Vivian. Where's Vivian? We need Vivian. Anyway, so Vivian's like mother and her aunties are always hanging around the big like estate that they all live in, and they're basically trying to find her a date by looking at like the ads in the news. Which, by the way, does anyone still do this? Do people send in like I don't know. This feels like something.
I don't know. It's a British thing, right? So.
What are you talking about?
Well, they're in the UK.
I'm sorry. Do you think the UK is like in 1986 right now? Like what?
Maybe you guys are taking a little time to catch up. We have apps now for that, though.
There's a whole sequence here where the aunties and the mum are like reading these different ads, and they're going, "Oh, this one sounds nice. He's got a dungeon," and like they make some jokes about someone having a dungeon. And when they see Mark Wahlberg later, they're like, "Does he have a dungeon?" Like it's all so juvenile. It's almost like Michael Bay watched 50 Shades of Grey somewhere between movie 4 and 5 and wanted to put in a joke.
Yeah. Well, even the beginning of this, I was thinking that that this seems like they're trying to capitalize on Game of Thrones popularity, because I think this is like around the end of that series, though, having like an opening with dragons and a more like, I wouldn't say realistic, but that more gray toned battle scene with fire and dragons and stuff. I'm like, okay, looks like the Game of Thrones but Transformers style.
Yeah, don't you dare say realistic.
What? Don't understand. What?
Don't you dare say realistic. You're not allowed.
But it's got that color palette of like Game of Thrones in the beginning.
It's got that. This is a video game in 2007 where everything's grey and brown color scheme. Mm-hmm. Yes. The Gears of War color scheme, if you will.
Even though everything is colorful, they've got like red and gold on their armor and stuff, or yellow, and it's still just like a super dull.
Yeah, it's like somehow it's just everything's desaturated. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, I'm just going to give the spoiler warning. I think it's time to get into it because fundamentally, I don't know how much more I can dance around all the dumb shit in this movie.
Let's go.
So the movie starts. I don't know what year it's supposed to be, but it's King Arthur.
400 something, 480 something.
It's King Arthur, and King Arthur and his knights are like trying to hold off the armies, and they're like, "Don't worry, Merlin's coming. Merlin's coming with his magics. He's going to save the day." And it turns out. And I already was starting to giggle at this because this is just, again, they're inserting Transformers into something in the past, even though this is also like a fictionalized past, is Merlin's magic is actually a piece of Transformers like technology that he uses, which controls a big 3-headed Ghidorah-looking metal dragon.
I believe his name is King Ghidorah. We're talking about, the monarch state here.
I mean, technically, this would be Mecha King Ghidorah.
Mecha King Ghidorah.
But there's a whole sequence here where Stanley Tucci, who you can barely even recognize because he's got like a big, wig and.
I actually didn't at first. I remember after I read it on IMDb that you had mentioned that he was playing Merlin in the last Transformers review. But I was like, gosh, he sounds familiar, but I don't recognize him at all. Like he had like a fake nose and a lot of hair.
I expected his character to show up later as well, because I thought, oh, they've got him back,
Yeah,
so they'll
like
have.
he's going to.
Yeah.
I would figure, okay, so you need to have a descendant of Merlin. Well, it would be Stanley Tucci. Like that's why you have him in Merlin makeup in the beginning.
But there's a bunch of dumb comedy here where he's begging for help from this big, like, so basically there's Transformers here that are on this ship, that's here in this time period, and that sort of get uncovered later, who are neither Autobots or Decepticons. They're like night Transformers, right? They don't seem to actually transform into something, but the looks of it, they're just sort of big metal dudes.
Like Sentinels, yeah.
Yeah. And he's basically just begging for help, and it's all just awkward comedy. He's just kind of like, please help me, I'll give up booze and money and I'll give up money and booze. It's just all awkward comedy that it feels like a sketch. I feel like I'm watching a sketch from like a Saturday Night Live skit or something, like, but I'm supposed to be taking this backstory seriously, that it's the premise for everything that's about to happen in this 2.5 hour movie. That's supposed to have stakes. They're supposed to have all these things. But sure enough, Merlin shows up with a big metal dragon and wins the war, which leads us to, I think, Anthony Hopkins making a big speech about stuff. Or maybe that comes a bit later. I don't know. Actually, see, before we go through the different things in order, we'll talk about everything, but Tara, I think we have to talk about it.
I'm ready.
The Order of Witwickens.
How clever.
No, it's not. Don't you dare. I don't want to hear you joke that it's clever.
The Order of Witwickens.
The Order of Witwickens. Can I just... Oh... So Anthony Hopkins is like the last member of a secret order, even though technically Sam Witwicky is in it, because there's a photo of him with his goofy face like in this room.
Yeah, they have like his. I think that was a photo that was used in another Transformers film.
That sounds right. It's almost like Sam Witwicky didn't realize he was part of a lineage of people who were there to help contain the secret of the Transformers, right? And apparently even because we find out Bumblebee was in World War II, and he doesn't remember it. Like it's been wiped from his memory. But so Anthony Hopkins reveals that this is a secret order that ever since the King Arthur days, Transformers have helped in human situations. So we get a quick flashback to like fighting the Nazis, and Bumblebee's got like a sort of more muted green color scheme, and he's killing Nazis. And
yeah, until he opens up, and then he's yellow.
Yes, and then Vivian is the descendant of Merlin. Her dad was part of the order.
That would explain her alcoholism.
Her dad was one of the Order of Witwickens before he died, and only she can control the staff because it's tied.
Is the Witwicken, like, does that go back as far as like the Merlin and Arthur times, or is because I mean Witwicky was like the one who accidentally, Grandpa Witwicky, right, was the one who accidentally came across them in the Arctic. So is this when the order started with him?
No,
it's just kind of a joke.
No, it predates that.
Okay, so he was destined to find this.
This movie is retconning the shit out of everything from the previous movies.
Allspark, whatever. Yeah. Okay. It's so dumb.
It's monumentally stupid.
I have to imagine that like Michael Bay and whoever the terrible writers are for this, or maybe good writers that are forced to do this, that happens. I have to imagine they're like, the audience, they're not really paying attention to like the lore. They're just there for popcorn and a fun time. So, and do your thing and just make shit up. No one's going to remember. No one's going to care. They're all just there to see the next exploding movie with boobies. Have fun.
I mean,
you have free reign to just make up whatever lore you want. Order of Witwickens.
I mean, 2 of these 3 writers worked on the Uncharted movie and Men in Black International.
Did we watch the Men in Black International?
No, I've never seen it.
We did the first Men in Black. I don't think we've ever gone back to that.
No, we never did
that's
the sequels.
Franchise we started.
One day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like yeah, Merlin's staff was buried with Merlin, and Vivian, because she's a descendant, she's the only one on Earth who can actually use it because it's tied to the DNA or the genetics of Merlin, right? So
I
that's
love that there's always just one descendant alive from someone centuries and centuries ago. Everyone just had one kid.
yeah. So there's a lot of coincidence for that to happen, really, when you think about it, because like realistically,
Yeah, you would have to have a very uncommon last name.
well, clearly at some point they changed the last name to avoid suspicion. You know, they have to keep the whole Merlin thing a secret.
Maybe Merlin was a nickname and his real name was a secret.
His real name was Haddock.
Maybe
Because that's her name,
she's
Vivian
named
Haddock.
after a fish. Yeah, she definitely wasn't. That's definitely a changed name.
Oh, sorry. That's the actress's name. Sorry. I glanced at her real name. Her real name's Laura Haddock. So the real actress is named after a fish. The character is Vivian Wembley.
Wembley. How posh.
It's very posh. Okay, what do I even want? Where do I want to go with this? So
maybe Hopkins.
Yeah. Well, can we talk about another character that I neglected to mention earlier, who's maybe my least favorite character in the whole movie, is Anthony Hopkins' human-sized transformer posh English butler robot.
Yeah.
I hate this. I hate this character.
I was also confused by how long this transformer had been around. Like, is this a transformer that was around from the beginning as well to like help guard the secret or help guard the person that is in charge of guarding the secret? As that gets passed down, does this transformer butler get passed down? Because he was kind of saying like, oh, I've watched a lot of my friends die or whatever. It's just part of the job. But like he talks so modern and like stupid modern.
There's a point during a car chase where he keeps yelling, "Move, bitch, get out of the way."
Yeah, or like of all the masters I ever served, you were the coolest or something. Like...
Yeah, but it's even Anthony Hopkins though has got a lot of really shitty, awkward dialogue where he'll just like throw in like little swears here or there. Like when he's walking through the castle or whatever, and he's saying, "Hey, that's my great auntie. She was a bitch," and then just keeps walking, and it's just this quick little thing that's meant to be funny, and it's like. It's
just like super jarring or like try hard.
Yeah, and he does it later on. He calls someone a dickhead. He has these little jabs that he just throws in, and all of it just feels really awkward. But the English butler who like goes and collects Mark Wahlberg, he travels to the US or wherever they are. I don't even know if it is the US to be honest. And gets Mark Wahlberg because he is the chosen knight. He's been picked by the technology, this medallion thing that I not open. So yeah. Right, so to go back to the start to sort of like settle into all this crazy shit we're doing. So we find out that Transformers have been declared illegal on Earth, and the only country on the planet that is accepting Transformers is Cuba, which is where John Turturro's character is just hanging out with Transformers. But all of the Autobots from the last movie, and to be fair, they brought them all back. It's the John Goodman one, it's the Ken Watanabe one, it's the same.
And we got a Steve Buscemi one.
Yeah, he's not in it for a lot. Yeah, he's not there for much, but yeah, he's got like one scene where I recognize his voice, and then I just
the voice is so clear.
Yeah. He's like, "How do you do, fellow Transformers?" Now that's a good joke. That's a good joke. Michael Bay, that's a freaking joke. Okay. So basically, there's like Transformers hiding, right? And these kids, this group of random kids, like sneak into because we hear that more and more Transformers are landing on Earth. Like the numbers are like going up and up. Like all these, like they're kind of like meteors where they just kind of they crash land on different parts of Earth. And these kids sneak into this site where one's landed, and they want to go and like touch it and go ooh and ah. And it wakes up. It's a little bit dangerous. But the big thing is that there's this military group. And I'm forgetting the initials. It was something like...
TRF, I think?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think that's meant to be like that's all Transformer letters, you know? If you abbreviate Transformers, it might... But
I think it like Transformer Reclamation... Something. Yeah.
So they come in hunting the Transformers. And this is one of the things that after the last movie, there was a the big focus was like Kelsey Grammer was hunting, like he was working with Decepticons, he was hunting the Autobots, and that was a big thing. Here, yeah, everyone just seems to hate Transformers, but it was really confusing at various points in the movie, like what humans actually felt that way and which ones were just going along because it was what they were being told to do. Because, you know, Josh Duhamel's character's back, and he obviously likes the Autobots, and he says he's following orders, and then you've got the other guy who's Rios from Picard, and he like hates all the Transformers, and he's desperate to kill them all. But at the same time, like we're not like maybe 20 minutes out of the movie or something like that before these guys who are supposed to be hunting all the Transformers are like meeting Megatron in a desert with lawyers to like negotiate a deal. And this was one of the scenes that stuck out to me as being absurdly stupid. So because they intercept communications of some Transformers talking about this Staff of Destiny, the spear, or the staff that's going to like
not the Spear of Destiny.
Yeah, that's going to be used to you know destroy Earth, and it's like, hey, the Decepticons are looking as well. Maybe we can work with them. So could you like go back to the first Transformers, right? Can you imagine watching that, being told that in 4 movies time, Josh Duhamel is going to like have a comedy scene where he has a conversation with Megatron, and there's like lawyers behind him, and that's the other thing. Like, it was Galvatron in the last one. He was spiritually Megatron reincarnated, but now he's just been called Megatron. No one even brings up Galvatron in this one. He's just Megatron now.
Maybe he has requested, like, yeah. I'll work with you if you call me Megatron.
But this whole scene is basically in order to help the humans. Which why are they trusting them? They're literally called Decepticons, but. To help the humans, they want their other Decepticons freed from prison, right? Like a Suicide Squad style thing or whatever. And we get this montage where they get names. And was it just me that felt like all of a sudden all these Decepticons were really wacky and had personalities? Which, for all the things we've said about all the previous Transformers movies, the one thing that was consistent is that all the Decepticons did not have really personalities. They were all just the same evil voice. They were all just, I serve Megatron. Like, they were all dead serious.
But, like, I didn't hate it because that is a common complaint, and I'm sure that's why it was in this movie, that all the Decepticons are difficult to tell apart. So they have like this introduction, like a the only thing I can compare it to really is like Creed, when the new fighter came up that he was fighting against, like the name would pop up and they would have like its stats and stuff. Or
I would have went more with, doesn't Inglourious Basterds do this when it's introducing the various team members? It's like, here's the Bear Jew, and it's like, boom, Bear Jew.
Wait, I actually don't remember if that happened, but I believe it. It does seem like a Tarantino
familiar,
thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just like, here's our guy, and then he does a quirky thing, and then the name pops up, and it's a freeze frame, and you're like, okay. Or like Suicide Squad did this.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Which
I don't I don't mind it. Like, I'm like, okay, well, we can have fun with this, but I still like don't care or like know who any of them are after it.
the two problems with it is that the characters themselves are stupid with bad humor, right? That's still a problem here, even though they have more. Like, they basically, they've just given them the personality of the goofy Autobots that we hated in the previous. This is it's the ones from the second movie that everyone hated. It's the ones from the third and fourth movies that everyone hated. They're just Decepticons now. But the bigger problem with it is that most of them like are in one scene after this and then just die. Like, they're just all gone.
The movie's too long, and then we don't. If we do see them again, I'm like, that was so long ago. I don't remember those introductions anymore.
The only one outside of Megatron that's memorable is actually one that they've brought back from the first movie. There's the cop car Barricade.
Yes.
Because they sort of like focus on him a little bit.
And that was a good one, like, well, in the first movie.
Yeah, but much like so many things in this movie, there's so many things going on that they introduce the Decepticons. They have a scene soon with the Autobots after this, but then they're just gone. Like, there's a point in the movie where Megatron comes and takes the spear, and it's like, getting into Act 3, and I'm like, oh, I guess they're a threat again. I guess they're still around. Like, they've been gone so long, they've not been a factor in the whole movie. Yep. It's like there's so many things in this.
There's too many enemies. There's too many people. There's the human factions that are against the Transformers. There's like the Decepticons that are coming after the Transformers. There's like the big villain and the Transformers. There's a lot of stuff is hunting these Transformers. So it's like, I don't know who's it gonna be. It could be anyone. Just roll the die. Whoever pops up.
Yeah, so that's a problem with Decepticons. But anyway, so yeah, we're introduced to was it Eliza? No, Isabella. Isabella is introduced. This is the teenage kid who has her own little like transformer that she's fixed up. That's kind of like
It's cute.
cute.
It's a cute
Yeah,
one.
they're going for like a BB-8 style thing almost, where it's this helpful little robot that's small and.
She is scrappy.
Mm-hmm. Um, and she ends up trying to save like an Autobot from the military, but or from the Transformer. No, there's like that's right. There's like Star Wars style like walker things that come in and try and like
Yeah, they look like ATSTs.
yeah, and they try and shoot the Transformer that's walking up, and she sort of like makes them shoot each other. So it shows she's smart. And at this point in the film, I'm like, oh, they're showing that she's capable, that she can think on her feet, and she's going to solve problems. And then she's just sidelined for the whole movie. And the one thing she does in the final big thing of the movie is so small and almost inconsequential that it just feels like, why is she in this film? Like she was promising at the start, and it felt like if the movie was going to focus on her, I was like, this is a good direction to go in. But then it ignores her, and then it feels like she's pointless by the end of the film. It's really weird. Like is a script. That's like a second draft is all I'm asking, guys. Like a second draft would be lovely. It's just it would just be nice.
Yeah, I wish these movies were different. Also,
Mark Wahlberg comes riding in his truck. He's been swooping in and saving Autobots where he can. He's with Bumblebee, and they introduced that Bumblebee can detach all of his parts and then reform. This feels like a big. This is like having the Decepticon can disguise himself as a human in the second movie. Like we're just introducing that he can just detach and come back to, and it's barely used again as well.
Honestly, I thought that was like a Mark Wahlberg upgrade or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because he's been with Mark Wahlberg, right? Like they've been hanging out together. So that's what my assumption was, since he was like an inventor who worked on robots. Like he gave him this upgrade. Like now pieces of you can magnetize together, so you can, if you get torn apart, you can be put whole again. I don't know.
I think that's a very generous read of Mark Wahlberg's character's abilities.
I guess that's what I just assumed, because this comes out of nowhere, and I don't know if this is a thing he could do in the cartoons, or like a toy version of him could do this or something, and that's why it's here. But like I just assumed that's what it was.
They certainly never bring it up if that's something that he did. I mean,
okay.
They definitely bring up that he's trying to fix his voice, although it doesn't work, and then Bumblebee just speaks at the end anyway, but a nice big climactic moment, which.
Well, it's what we suspected, right? Is that he was always holding it back on purpose.
But that doesn't make sense at the start of the movie when they put in the new piece and it doesn't work and he gets annoyed.
He doesn't want to. He just wants to. Speak in movie reference. I mean, okay. I get it. That's how I talk.
Oh dear. So, yeah, there's a bit of a fight scene and they run away. The girl, Isabel. I'm going to keep saying Eliza now because I've said that once. Isabel comes with them, and they go back to this junkyard where they're hiding out. The robot dinosaurs are there as well. And I thought, that's kind of. I did not expect them to remember that these existed, because these movies are so good at forgetting half the stuff they did in the last one.
I like the idea of it being a pet and like a really, really big dog that you have to keep track of. But it's odd because like it is like when it turns into its other Transformer self, it's something that's like prestige and like ancient and something you'd want to like have reverence for. But when it's a big dinosaur, you just want to be, hey, booga booga, like don't eat that car.
So, while I'm complimenting that it remembered these existed and kept the continuity, I will also then immediately dock points, because after one scene of them getting involved with a fight, they're just kind of left here for the rest of the movie and never get involved in anything.
Yeah, and Gerard Carmichael's in it too, and I think I like him. Like even in this, I didn't find him like he wasn't written to be annoying.
There's just not enough of him to actually feel like he's a real character. He's just kind of there.
No, he's just like, oh, here's a popular like up and coming comedian. We'll throw him in here because people like him, and it'll give him something for his resume, I guess, for if he wants to get more movie roles. But like, I don't know, like that would have been like a decent comic relief, and maybe he would have been allowed to improvise.
Well, again, the problem is that they introduce him here, and it feels like, because this is the thing. At this point in the movie, there's a little bit of bonding between Wahlberg and Isabella, where it's like he's kind of accepting that she's a runaway who's going to stay here with him, and we get introduced to this. He's basically Jimmy. He's basically the T.J. Miller of this movie, where he's the guy who works with Wahlberg and complains about his job.
Watch out, you're going to get turned into a skeleton.
But the problem is that all this stuff is, and this was what really frustrating me about like them just ignoring Isabella after Mark Wahlberg leaves, is that like all of this, I felt like this was going to be the friendship of the movie was them, and then they spend almost no time together. There's like one moment right at the very end where he says, "You did a good job, kid," and that's like it. Like it felt like it was setting up the main friendship of the whole thing, and then they don't spend any time together for like 90% of the movie. So for some reason, the military group, the TRF, are hell-bent on getting to Mark Wahlberg, right? And I think at the start it's because he's got this like medallion thing that the Autobot that crashed had on him, and it's kind of attached himself to, like, it's sort of like transformed into like an armband effectively, and it's on Mark Wahlberg's arm. And this has effectively picked him to be the knight because he has the qualities of a knight. Okay. I mean, I feel like they didn't really establish it was this heroic character, I guess, in the last one. So it felt like a bit of he just happens to be the lead guy and your friend. Mm-hmm. Like, imagine this was still Witwicky. Imagine this was Shia LaBeouf and it attached itself to him. It's like, you're the chosen one because you have the qualities. And I'm like, come on. Just imagine.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, I mean, Optimus has already made Sam Witwicky like a knight of, like, if he could, right? Because he made some he's like an honorary transformer because of all the help that he's provided to them and stuff like that.
That was air quotes for the audio listeners there, just in case they didn't get it.
So I could definitely see them doing that if Sam was still leading this franchise.
Yep, they got a photo of him though. That's something.
Yep.
So they show up and like chase them all away, and they end up in this. Apparently, there's an abandoned town nearby that we don't have to feel bad about getting absolutely destroyed in all the action. But the Decepticons come rushing in because at this point they're now working with the military, and go after. And this is the thing: this partnership with the Decepticons, which we spent a whole scene with this big. We had this comedy bit where the lawyers are sitting behind Josh Duhamel, and they're sort of saying, "No, we can't let him out. He's too dangerous." And there's even like a joke where one is actually too bad, and they've got him like tied up like Hannibal Lecter, which I'm sure is an intentional reference because Anthony Hopkins is in the movie. Even Megatron's like, "Okay, fine, I'll accept that one, but let this other one out." Like they basically do that comedy beat. So we get this extended sequence of setting up all these Decepticons, and they're going to work with this TRF military unit. And then after this one action scene in this abandoned town, is this alliance with the Decepticons ever mentioned, brought up, or have any bearing on anything after that scene?
I don't think so. But there are a lot of scenes that happen, so I could have missed it.
I don't think it does. I don't think it's ever really brought up again. It's so weird, and when they're driving away and they're running away from the military group, and like the big, dinosaur transformer like crashes into them and stuff. Like Rios from Picard is like, "Oh, I hate these. They killed my men. We're going to kill them." And Josh Duhamel's trying to like, no, the Autobots are good, but no killing. But he's out for blood, and they send in drones. And we get this big sequence where Mark Wahlberg's like hanging from a drone when he gets like thrown out the window. But the whole thing is that the English robot butler is there. Yeah, listen to those words. The English robot butler is here to pick up Mark Wahlberg and fly him in a plane back to England to meet with Anthony Hopkins because he's now the chosen knight to... And I got really confused about all this because I'm like, why is there a chosen knight? Because clearly the important character is the Merlin character. Like, yeah. Other than the fact that the thing in his arm turns into a sword that's strong enough to block a Transformer sword later on, does Mark Wahlberg's inclusion in the plot for the rest of the film actually like amount to like specifically?
I don't know, like
just specifically in the sense that he's the chosen one. Like I get that he's there and he like he jumps in and saves her at points and he like whatever.
Sure, I understand. I think the only reason it's there is, they have all that made up exposition about how behind every knight of the round table was a transformer as well. So there is some sort of bond between these knights, these sentinel knights, and the knights of the round table. So maybe like he's
Oh
going to
yeah.
be
When,
the next one of these or
when,
something.
when Anthony Hopkins is showing them the round table and he's saying this is where they sat, you get a shot in the past of like the knights sitting around the table and they've all got
It's like a
transformers.
coliseum too, because it
Yeah.
has to be big enough to fit all those
Yeah,
transformers in
and
it.
they've all got transformers standing behind them, and it's like, oh come on, really? So like, and while this is all going on,
English robot butler.
we're introduced to Vivian, who's playing polo, who's given a speech at Oxford about how
She's late to her Oxford class because she was winning at polo. She's just amazing.
but she doesn't believe in King Arthur. She's telling her students that it's a bunch of nonsense. It's not real, and that's all fine. And then we're introduced to her family, who are all saying, "You have to find a man. Why are you so alone?" Meanwhile, Mark Wahlberg gets a message from his daughter saying, "You've got to find a girlfriend, Dad. You're a loser. You're sad and lonely. Go find someone." So it's setting up the pieces. She is taken to Anthony Hopkins as well because her car, and this is actually something that was kind of in the third movie. Remember when like the love interest's car turned out to be a transformer and kidnapped her? That's basically what happens here, except it's a good transformer who's just taken her to Anthony Hopkins. And they even like there's a casual little joke about how she's technically been kidnapped. Lol, she's freaking out. She's been kidnapped. And like the car puts her in the back and like has to hold on to her. It turns into like a fancy sports car at one point. But she arrives just after Mark Wahlberg does, and Anthony Hopkins is just spewing nonsense. He's putting in weird little hip things. He's almost he's like Malkovich in the third one a little bit. Remember when he was putting in like these weird Twitter dialogue and he was talking about being, I don't know, I can't even remember anything he said, but he had like, cool hip little phrases that he would throw in. Anthony Hopkins kind of does that here as well.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, there is that. It's very out of place.
Mm-hmm. And then he
especially because we love Anthony Hopkins. I assume we do anyways. Like he's always good.
I mean, obviously, yeah. When he's in something good, he's great. But this is not one of those examples.
It's like even he can't make this work. Yes.
Yeah. It's actually, I don't think it's till later, because I think this is like the one thing that John Turturro gives to the movie, because he basically keeps calling Anthony Hopkins and he wants to be brought into the Order of the Witwickens, because that's his dream, to be involved in all this. And Anthony Hopkins like says yes over the phone, and basically we find out that these big metal parts that are coming out of the ground over the oh god, we've not even talked about any of this. All right,
no.
So the big threat that's happening throughout the movie, we'll talk about who's responsible in a bit, but the big threat that's happening throughout the movie is that Cybertron is coming towards Earth and it's going to collide, which was also kind of something they did in the third one. Remember, like Cybertron was coming down.
Cybertron was coming to Earth, in the
and it looked
one.
different there as well. It was more of just a sphere.
It was Moonfall. Yeah.
Whereas now it's got all these sticky out bits, like it's sort of half exploded and it's kind of, I don't know, whatever. But so Cybertron's coming to Earth, and there's like these big metal like things coming out of the ground all over the planet of Earth, right? And it's like apparently Earth had a different name to like the Transformers in ancient times. It was Unicron, which I've heard of from the cartoons, which was like a planet-sized transformer that it was going to kill everything or something. I'm also pretty sure. I want to say that the trailer for the new movie mentions Unicron, so I'm not sure how like.
I mean, this one does have sequel bait.
It does, but the new one's not a sequel to this. The new one's a sequel to Bumblebee, and it's set in the past.
Okay.
Yeah, the sequel bit in this I don't think is ever going to get followed up on. I think.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I think this was the first one that because they take so much money to make. I think this was the first one that was considered like not a success.
I mean, it still made like a shit ton, but yeah, like for what it cost. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't worth making another one. The slope was going too down money wise.
I mean, enough that they're still trying to like reboot it and stuff, but yeah, like and spin-offs and whatnot. But yeah, basically they were done with Michael Bay after this, I guess. It's like,
Yeah,
these
Bay,
are
you're
two.
done. Here's some turtles.
Those already happened by this point.
Yeah.
And he didn't direct them.
I don't know. I didn't watch them.
Yeah. He's not a director of those, though. Everyone always thinks he directed those movies.
No, he produced them. I know, but they do look like a Michael Bay
Oh, they
movie.
do. Yeah, they absolutely do. So over the course of the film, these things are coming out of the ground, and then John Turturro later on says that they're only spread out because the Earth itself spread out, and he brings up, was it Pangea? Was the when all the Earth was connected as one big island, and then it spread out?
Oh, yeah. Did we mention that? That what's his name? Michael Hall is in this. Not Michael Hall. Tony Hale. I don't know what I'm thinking.
Michael Hall. I was like, who's Michael Hall? Michael C. Hall. Dexter's in this? What?
I'm putting too many different people in one here. Yes, Tony Hale's in this.
Yes, he's basically just the guy that they cut to every so often at NASA screaming at the military, "We're all going to die." Yeah. That's basically his thing. He's the one.
Buster Bluth is in this.
He's the one monitoring everything that's going on. Did it make you sad to see him in a Transformers movie?
You know, it's just. I'm sure Garrett Graham will be in the next one or something.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Combs and all the other people I love.
Anyway, to finish what I was saying is that John Turturro reveals that this was all connected and closer together, and the center of whatever this thing is that's coming out through the planet is Stonehenge. That's what Stonehenge is. So it's yet another thing on Earth that's tied into Transformers.
Stonehenge from Pangea.
Well, maybe the implication is that Stonehenge was built on top of, like, the actual Transformer thing.
Yeah, the main whatever access point or whatever it is that is Stonehenge is on top of. Yeah, that's I know I'm making a joke, but like obviously Pangea was a
lot longer ago than Stonehenge was built.
Longer ago, before dinosaurs and stuff, but like also I guess Transformers were here even before then, even before dinosaurs and
apparently. So what's causing all this?
They're like graboids.
So what's causing all this then? This is where we're going to talk about where Optimus Prime is, because Optimus Prime ended the last movie by saying, "I'm coming for you, my creator." Right? That was his thing. He flew off into space. He's going to fight his creator. So here's my problem with this. This really stuck out to me. So imagine that a human said, right, "I'm going to go find our creator," right? And then you imagine that story playing out. Maybe you do something like Prometheus, where it's like you find this alien race or whatever. But it would be a journey. It would be this great like trek. It would be this great thing to find your creator, because it's this thing where you're not even sure how real the creator is. You know, if you're talking about God or if you're talking about something else. Optimus Prime flies all the way to Cybertron. He lands, and then immediately his creator is just standing there. Like, she's just there.
Oh, hi.
She's like, yeah, Gemma Chan plays Quintessa, who, by the way, she looks awful. And when I say she looks awful, like,
she looks like a StarCraft villain or something.
Yeah, when I say she looks awful, I'm not saying the actress looks awful, because she's CG. She's like a robotic angel thing, I guess. But she looks awful. She's got all these like little, like, her face is made up of all these little bits, and it just looks really computery, you know, in a really unappealing way. And the whole thing with this is that she wants to initiate this whole Cybertron goes to Earth and destroys Earth because it's Unicron, and she basically just like turns Optimus Prime and turns him into Nemesis Prime, which feels like a pretty big plot point. But
is that a thing from the cartoons you know about?
I don't know. Probably, I guess. I don't know.
He's got purple eyes.
His eyes, yeah, his eye color changes. But so this is set up relatively early on, and then Cybertron's like, I'd say slowly coming towards Earth. I mean, in the actual concept of like getting to Earth in a few days, it's actually really quick. But you know what I mean? In the pacing of the movie, it's slowly coming to Earth. And that's okay, fine. You set that up. So Optimus Prime is just off screen for a long ass time, right? And it's until that we're getting into sort of the third act before Optimus sort of shows up. But so at this point in the movie, halfway through, We've had exposition about Knights of the Round Table, the Order of the Wiccans.
Wiccans.
We have Autobots fighting in World War II. We've got a military group that are working with
Not just
Decepticons.
Autobots. Bumblebee.
We've got a military group that is hunting this staff. We've got Quintessa, who's like a Transformer goddess, who's now mind controlling or like corrupting Optimus Prime, and Cybertron's on its way to Earth. And on top of that, our main characters, Mark Wahlberg is now a chosen one who's going to be the last knight, and Vivian's the descendant of Merlin, and they have to find Merlin's magic staff. Does that sound like a lot? Because
And
it's
there's
a
love
lot.
story.
Is there though?
Yeah. And the team building with the young girl in the beginning, and
I've already forgotten about
all
her.
those things that we've abandoned.
Yeah, I've already forgotten about her because she's not been in the movie now for like half an hour at this point. By the time we got to all this shit.
Yeah. We have all these new characters, and yeah, it's a lot. It's overwhelming. It's a lot. It's a problem with a lot of modern blockbuster films. It's just there's just so much stimulation, so everything's so hyper stimulating the brain that you're just like, I can't. I guess I don't have as many complaints when I'm watching it because I can't keep up with everything that's happening, but it looks kind of good. So, and the action's kind of okay. Like, I don't know. Like, what is the point of just having so much in all these films? Like, you're trying to make it a big epic, but like most of the epics that we, have stood the test of time are pretty simple.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, it's overly complex, and there's just so much going on so quickly, and like this military group TRF keep chasing the Autobots and keep chasing Mark Wahlberg constantly to the point where they chase them to the museum where they're getting stuff, then they chase them to the Navy Museum. Which honestly, the only joke I liked maybe in this whole movie is when Mark Wahlberg and Vivian run in like to the Navy Museum because they need to get to the submarine that apparently is like part of the quest. And they jump over the gates, and the security guard is ready to jump out, and then Anthony Hopkins just comes running up with their grandpa going, "Don't worry, I've got them. They just really like submarines." I thought that was slightly amusing. Like, that's the bar. That's the bar we're at in this movie, where that joke gave me a chuckle, and I thought, you know what, that was okay. That's the bar. And maybe that's just because the movie is mentally, like, abused me up until this point. That I'm ready and willing to just accept the joke.
I don't know that I had a response to that joke at all.
But they find like a clue in like her children's like book that her father used to read her that leads her to the museum that leads to the submarine, and then they go in the submarine to this giant.
So overly complicated. Like she has to find a pop-up book and then follow the clues in the pop-up book. Like it's like a treasure map. It's so stupid.
And they go in the submarine, which turns out to I guess be a transformer, although it never actually transforms into something else.
I was waiting for it.
Like, because they mention it's a transformer, she basically flips one switch and it just starts going where it's supposed to go, and it's like, oh, it's because it's a transformer, and it's taken her, it's taken them where they need to go. But it never actually transforms into something later on. It never like reveals itself. In fact, honestly, even like I was actually noticing that towards the end of the movie that Optimus Prime had never been a truck. It's not until the final scene that he's a truck.
I agree, because when you see the truck, you're like, oh yeah,
he's a truck. That's right. I forgot about that. So, like, they go in the submarine, and still at this point, TRF are like getting into their submersible like vehicles, and like Josh Duhamel and thingy from Picard, like they're inside these submarines as well, and they're chasing them. And I'm like, why are you still chasing these characters? Like, since you started chasing them, there's all this big cataclysmic, the world's going to end stuff going on, like, and yet you're still chasing them. And there was a points where I got lost in the shuffle, and it's because I think the movie's just got so much stuff going on, and it's got so many moving parts that I was getting conflicted. I'm like, are they chasing them to stop them? Are they chasing them because they want to get to the spear first? Are they chasing them for, And then when they actually do all come to a head, and they're, they all end up inside this big alien spaceship that's at the bottom of the ocean, and they find like Merlin's crypt, and and they find like all these like these night transformers that are all sort of dormant that eventually wake up. Like, I feel like if we're building up to a confrontation where like Wahlberg's going to have to make his case, where Cage Yeager, that's his name, where Cage Yeager is going to have to make his case to Lennox, which by the way, those two don't know each other, and yet they keep referring to each other like almost on like a first name basis, like they do. Like I'm like, you weren't in the first 3 movies, Mark Wahlberg. You don't know who Lennox is, but you keep saying his name like you do know who he is. Maybe that's just me, but that stuck out to me. But like, I felt like there was like no actual payoff. Like, if the whole movie's been this build to like, oh, when these two groups are finally going to have to face off each other, it felt like immediately it's sidelined because the big night transformers start waking up, and it's like, oh, now it's just them trying to survive in action chaos. There's no actual, you've been chasing us, now I have to convince you, and that complaint extends even worse to Optimus, because when Optimus like comes in here and he kills one of these knights, immediately Mark Wahlberg knows that something's wrong, like he's been taken over and he's not himself.
That's not Optimus.
But he says it before he does anything bad.
I think Optimus has a few lines before then, and but it's not based
much.
On those lines is what he's judging it on.
He basically says,
and Bumblebee's there too, right? So Bumblebee's like kind of confirming.
Well, that was even more pissed me off though, is that Optimus Prime comes in and he's like acting out a character. Mark Wahlberg repeatedly says it, and then Optimus keeps talking like he's a villain. And then later on in the scene, like towards the end of the scene, it just like was a wide shot and like Bumblebee's just standing there. And I'm like, how about when he first does something out of character, cut to Bumblebee's reaction, given that he's his oldest friend, it would actually it would matter to him that he's acting out of character, especially since the whole thing's going to pay off in an Optimus Bumblebee fight that's going to happen in 5 minutes time. Why are we not focusing on Bumblebee?
Audiences love Bumblebee, and we love when he has cute expressions or like is very expressive or something, so like, you should
like
you should remember that Transformers are like the main characters of this.
They should be. But, like a single reaction shot of Bumblebee looking sad and confused is all you needed, and they didn't do
worried
it.
Or
they did not do it. They focus entirely on Mark Wahlberg trying to talk to him, and it's
Mark Wahlberg's got to get his Excalibur or whatever, so he could be the last knight.
And I like how you said that. I just burst into spontaneous laughter. So the whole thing like devolves into action, and the ship, like once Optimus has the staff, the ship starts to rise out the ocean. Cybertron's in the sky, and like they all end up on top of the ship as it's sort of on top of the water, but there's like waves crashing in, and it sort of hits them and stuff. And we didn't even talk about Mark Wahlberg and Vivian Sexy Legs like having their like dinner date on the submarine because the English butler decided to give them a date. Remember that? That was the whole thing.
I don't know why. I mean, is it because he's a butler? He feels like he has to do this, or is there a reason where he's like, well, you have to provide the Merlin lineage because you're the only survivor.
Yes. I don't remember when he said it, but I'm pretty sure at some point in this movie, Anthony Hopkins said the word bitchin'.
I don't remember. I'm sure I blocked it out.
I'm pretty sure he did at one point. But we get this big fight between. So Bumblebee jumps in and starts fighting Optimus, right? And it's this like fight where Optimus is kind of winning. Bumblebee's getting some parts knocked off, although it doesn't really matter because we know they can just reattach, as we saw it later on. But it's effectively when he's about to kill Bumblebee after he's kind of winning the fight. Bumblebee speaks. He uses his own voice, and Optimus says, "I've not heard your voice since the fall of Cybertron."
I disagree with that.
Yes, end of the first
we hear
movie.
It at the end of the first film.
Mm-hmm. And it was different as well. It was a different voice.
Again, this is just like, no one's going to remember. Just make whatever you want for the lore. Like, well, a lot of people remember the first movie because it's the easiest one to follow, and most people enjoyed it when it came out.
What's so annoying about this though is that Optimus's eyes just change back, and he's like, "Bumblebee, my friend, I'm sorry. Like, I have failed you all." Right? Like, if the whole trailer, right, and then even the setup of this movie is you're setting up that Optimus is the villain. You take out the Decepticons, you have it just be Optimus working for Quintessa. Is as much as I think Quintessa's stupid looking and a stupid big dumb like anime style character, but you have more of it. You have like Optimus like being the villain, and you have the other characters having to like deal with the fact that Optimus. You have Optimus be the villain for like most of the movie, and then you finally turn them towards the end and have him be the real Optimus Prime again. Instead, he shows up. He acts like a villain for maybe 6 minutes, and then it's over, and they've reverted him back to Optimus Prime, and he's immediately back to making speeches. And they even redo the joke, if you can even call it a joke, where he makes a speech about like saving the world, and like Ken Watanabe and John Goodman are like, "Oh man, I love that guy. Oh, it gets me every time when he makes a speech." Yeah, you made that joke in the last movie.
Yep. I am Optimus Prime. We know.
And then he like at some point along all this, Mark Wahlberg calls the people back in his junkyard to like come and help with the fight, and the girl Isabel sneaks onto the ship. She's not meant to be there, but they all end up together. And the payoff to the military stuff, because during all this fight, Josh Duhamel's like there, and he's sort of like falling around, or whatever. So they all end up together, and when they're flying towards Stonehenge, because that's the center of everything, like there's a whole scene where all the military guys like rip off their badges in the helicopter. They're like, you know what? Yeah, like because Mark Wahlberg basically calls them out and says, "Nah, the Autobots saved us, and I never turned on them, but you did, you scumbags." And then they all start ripping off their TRF badges, like, "No, we're all together now." And I'm like, you have not earned this moment. You have done nothing to give me that they've all turned the cheek and say, "No, we're Team Autobot now." Like, you've given me nothing. And the Autobots themselves have had almost no time to actually be characters in this movie, so I don't really care about them, even though I feel like I should. Like, all of it is just, like, everything is just so undercooked that nothing resonates. None of it matters.
No. Yeah, and even, like, you know, watching these so close together, and Josh Duhamel, although he was gone for one, if not two films.
Yeah, just 4. It was only 4. He was missing 4.
Just 4, he was gone. I still should be like, oh, this character, I'm glad to see him, and let's see him do something heroic. And I'm still just like, I don't care about this character. The military stuff in these films suck, and this is just a continuation of me not caring about any of this. So yeah, there's zero payoff in the way it's written in this movie, but also his character throughout the entire franchise has just been like, I don't enjoy this.
Not to compliment the third movie too much, but I think the third movie, for all the faults that it still had and all the dumb stuff it still did, like, it still tried to pay off what was effectively a trilogy where it was like, okay, some of these humans are going to work side by side with the Autobots, and like the third act of Transformers 3, while it was over long, is still the most satisfying one probably the entire franchise.
Probably.
Because it felt more focused in a way where it was like, okay, we're all going to work together, we're going to take down the Decepticons once and for all. And I feel like 4 and 5 have like had to like bend over backwards to try and like create the conflict. And like, so we've had all this stuff where, oh, the Autobots are like illegal and like everyone hates them now. And I'm like, why? Like, the one's giving me a compelling reason why.
Well, even like, oh, the Autobots are illegal and they're not, and Transformers are no longer allowed. But so many of them are like just moving in that they can't quite keep up anyway. So it's like, well, is anybody really keeping track? Because like, can't, that's in the introduction too. They're like, just like, but you know, there's just a reign of Transformers all the time. So like, it sounds like they can't keep up with it anyway. So is it really that big of a deal?
Meanwhile, there's a relatively pointless scene where Anthony Hopkins like sneaks into 10 Downing Street to talk to the Prime Minister. And I can't think, did anything come of this? Like, was it important?
No. It's just a cool location.
Obviously, he goes into like say, "Hey, you have to listen to me. We're under threat. Blah blah blah. Do these things." But I don't think he actually makes any decisions that like help the final fight. From what I remember,
he's trying to get that European audience to finally be on board with the Transformers. Did it work?
This is post Brexit. The UK is not part of the EU anymore. That said, though, when they probably started making it, it would have been before Brexit, I guess, because this came out in 2017.
Yeah, it's right there. Yeah. After that horrible year for the world, really.
I know. Yeah, Brexit and Trump in the same year was that was a wild year. So the other thing that's been going on during this, which I have to question here, they keep saying, oh, we're going to cut like a microwave, Cybertron's going to like destroy the world, but we literally see like Cybertron dragging part of its planet, like because like some of it's like separate.
Yeah, like an anchor.
Yeah, we see it dragging like over land, and it's obviously huge. So we see it like just outside of Hong Kong at one point, and it's just like tearing up, and like thousands or the people are dying. Like I would think that the gravitational effect of another planet like effectively be like it's almost like
might screw up our rotation.
Yeah, it's almost like a Venn diagram almost, where the two circles of the planets are like overlapping. Surely that has to mess with everything. Yeah,
Well, Tony Hale kind of explains it.
Does he?
It's like a Jiffy Pop in a microwave.
He just yells physics. I'm not doing this mumbo jumbo. We're going to solve this with physics.
Yeah, well, he explains it in Star Trek Science, where it's like putting too much air into a balloon. Ah.
Yeah, the action is not that good. I mean, they all go up to fight on like the Cybertron thing that's coming down, to go after Quintessa, and Optimus ends up being kind of late for whatever reason, but he makes a big entrance on the dragon. The three-headed dragon brings in Optimus. There's a whole bit where the teen girl like gets her little robot to blow up like a turret. And that's like her one contribution to the whole final act.
You remember the last one where I said I kind of enjoyed the set piece idea of having those big lines that attach from like the sky to a skyscraper and stuff, and they have to go through that. Well, they did that again, but like times a million. And I hated it because it was just too much.
I mean, they get to a point when they're inside the ship at the end where they're all like weightless, like they're in space, and they're not actually in space, but like it sort of plays like that.
Right. Yeah.
But Optimus has a big bit where he decapitates like a bunch of the evil knights, Transformers, with his sword in one swoop, and yells that he's Optimus Prime. He kills Quintessa by giving her a chop of the head, I think, from what I remember.
She kind of just turns into energy.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, technically she's not dead, because we do see her, like, there's a mid-credit scene, kind of, that teases what the sixth movie could be, which is, I don't think, ever going to happen now. I'd be very surprised if they ever pay that off anywhere.
Maybe in 20 years when these movies become nostalgia, or 30 years or 40 years or whatever, we'll have a Flash crossover with Transformers, and we'll finally get this long-awaited sequel. The story will have some closure. Oh, yeah. Everyone will be satisfied.
Because that's what these movies need, is more moving parts. That's exactly what they need.
When we get the Transformers multiverse, we'll finally get that.
Yeah, I mean
that resolution.
Mark Wahlberg's weird like arm thing turns into a sword at one point, and he saves either Optimus or Bumblebee mid-fight.
He's the last knight.
Yes. Anthony Hopkins dies because Megatron shoots him in the face. At one point, Megatron...
That'll do it, yeah.
When Megatron's at the junkyard, actually, he picks up his original head and looks at it. Yeah. He has like a... It's a quarriage from Avatar.
I know, I was going to say that too.
I'm actually going to give it one compliment. There's something I forgot to bring up in the last one that bugged me, but it felt like in the last one there was this conscious effort to never use any of the main themes of the music from the first three.
Yes.
Whereas this one actually did use them, especially towards the end. It started bringing in some of the themes from the earlier movies. And it felt weird not to do it in the last one, because it was like, I guess they were trying to go for this like semi-reboot thing because they changed a lot of the cast, but like this music I associate with Optimus and Bumblebee, so it feels weird that it's like you're doing a heroic music, but you're trying to avoid using the Transformers or Optimus themes, and it's like weird.
It's like the best thing these movies have going for them.
It is literally the best thing they have is the music. So yeah, I appreciated at least that was back in some way.
Yeah, me too. Did you ever see the Anthony Hopkins movie Remains of the Day?
I have not, no.
I actually love that film. It's very slow, and but it's based on a book that had like a lot of awards, but he plays a servant, like Mr. Stevens, and he's like he's for some sort of like Downton Abbey type family, where he's just like he's like the
The
head servant.
Wembleys.
Yeah, the Wimbleys, the Whitwickens. But like that's his life. Like he gives his life to servitude for this family, and he gets a lot of reward from it. Even though we watch him and are like, but you're never going to be like this. You're never going to be treated like an equal and stuff. So it's one of my favorite roles that he's ever done because I don't know, like it's just it's a really great performance. It's a really interesting character, and the whole time I see Anthony Hopkins with his own robot like butler, I'm just like, are they making a meta thing about this?
Oh,
Like I know
I don't think
it
so.
was a big deal. Like the movie was like well received when it came out and like critically and probably award season. Also
No,
had Emma Thompson in it and stuff like that. But like,
I think they made the Hannibal reference with a Decepticon, which is obviously intentional. He might have even had some lines that referenced Hannibal at some or Silence of the Lambs at some point. But to be honest, when he was talking a lot and he's that section in the middle where he's in the castle talking to the other characters, he talks so much in that section that I definitely didn't pay attention to everything he said. I was definitely zoning out and not hearing it all. So, because I was kind of half expecting him to say something about quid pro quo or something, a line from Silence of the Lambs, one of the famous things that he said.
Quid pro quo.
Because they did it. Obviously, they did this with Leonard Nimoy in the third one, where there was just like 5 Star Trek references.
Yeah.
So clearly, it's not something that Bay is above doing. Bay's not above doing many things. Let's be honest.
I don't think that Michael Bay's seen Remains of the Day.
I doubt it. So yeah, I mean, obviously, like, oh yeah, okay, I can't believe it. So there's a French Autobot that's with Anthony Hopkins. I think it's the car that what's her face is kidnapped in.
Yeah.
But he turns out to be a French Autobot who's not actually French. And they even point this out because she even says, "What, is he actually French?" And he's like, "No, he just loves the accent." And he's like, "No, I hate the accent. We be like." Whatever, I don't know what they're doing there, but they set up this thing that's also kind of a big deal. He has like a grenade weapon that like slows down time in a bubble. It's a very video game thing, right? This is exactly the sort of thing you get in some video games. And they set it up, and I'm like, oh, that feels like a big thing to set up. And they do, but they only use it once later on, and it's right. And I to the point where I forgot that it was set up, but they use it right at the end when the 2 humans are falling to their death, and he shoots the time grenade, and it slows them down, long enough that Optimus can come in and grab them. And then we get the big moment right at the end as Optimus, for the first time in the whole movie, drives out of the smoke as a truck. Because he's just been walking around the whole thing. And he comes out, and that's when he starts his speech, and the movie's done in 30 seconds later, because these movies wrap up. Like, they're so long, but they go through so much and have no breathing room, which should not be possible in a 2.5-hour movie, is to not have breathing room, but they don't.
Nope. It's just go, go, go.
Yeah. And then this
I assume this movie was supposed to be longer too, and then
Probably.
studio was like, no, we can't have another Age of Extinction length movie. Please.
And this one has the balls to do this mid-credit scene. It's not even like a mid. If anything, it's like a just ongoing credit scene, because as the credits start playing, you see some different locations, and then you see the Quintess.
Yeah,
who's now human looking.
I don't mind that style. I thought that was kind of neat, actually.
It's fine.
We're getting the mid-credit scene as the credit is going. I
don't mind the technique of doing it that way.
Yeah.
I do mind that this movie has the balls to try and set up something with this really shit villain, although it's kind of funny now, because now it's clear that we're never going to get this. This is never going to be paid off.
And well, it does bring back something that we mentioned earlier. Doesn't this seem like a big deal that a transformer can just disguise itself as a person? That's so realistic, even if you're touching it, you can't tell.
Well, I mean, to be fair though, I would not relate this to that, and just in the sense that this feels like she's their god, so she can just do this,
right?
And
the other thing was a dog creature.
Yes. It's still a huge deal that a Decepticon was able to do it in the second movie. With this, I'm like, oh, this is because she's more powerful. She's she's something else. She's not just a transformer kind of thing. But But she's so lame, and there's like barely any like exploration of who she is or where she comes from or why she even wants to destroy Earth. Like why? I don't know. like she beats up Optimus a little bit when he first gets there and says, "Oh, you stupid like Transformers had a war with each other," and she's mad about that. But otherwise, we don't really get much from her to suggest like why she cares about things. What her motivations are or what she wants, other than just let's destroy Earth. And
I'm trying to think if I can remember a line that she said about what her motivation would be, because when she does have a conversation with Prime when he first meets her, and I want to say it's brought up there about why she wants to go for Earth.
it may be,
but I can't remember. Like there's so much of that happened in the film.
I think the problem is though, if it is there, and I believe you that it probably is that it's probably one lane of dialogue and then it quickly moves on.
Good. Next scene.
Yeah. We said a thing. Now cut to the military talking about things. Now cut to Tony Hale freaking out about satellite charts. Now cut to Mark Wahlberg saying that he misses his daughter. Now cut to the French Autobot. Now cut to the English robot butler. Now cut to Anthony Hopkins saying bitchin'. Like it just.
Yeah, for a lot of Mark Wahlberg is in hiding, and he says he can't contact his daughter because if they know where each other are, then they'll both be arrested or something.
Yes.
So it's a big sacrifice that he's doing this. But he sure makes himself very public to a lot of people that could arrest him.
Yeah, they basically know where he is the whole movie anyway, so it feels kind of irrelevant.
Yeah.
Also, Bumblebee gets a tracker put on him at the start of the movie, and you think, oh, that'll be a big deal. And then after they follow him once, Bumblebee transforms, and then the other Autobot just kind of notices it and goes, "What's this?" And then just says, "Bumblebee, you fool, you got tracked." And then that's it. We just move on. Oh dear. I feel like it didn't feel as long as the last one because the last one was literally longer, but this I think has the dumbest plot. This has the most insulting. We're just throwing all these really weird ideas without a care in the world kind of attitude.
Honestly, I would have liked this more if we just stayed with the King Arthur story and that was the movie. We'll just do a Transformers in medieval times. That could be fun.
Oh sure, yeah, that could be. And again, but the key thing is it'd be more simple, and that's what it needs. It needs to be more simple.
Yes.
Complexity for complexity's sake is not a good thing. It just,
Yep.
This movie cannot juggle all these elements effectively.
And that's what it does in the next film, because we've already reviewed Bumblebee, and
that's true,
that was
true.
A much simpler story with basically two characters and a comic relief that was funny in John Cena.
And the thing is that Bumblebee, and I don't remember it that well, but you've got this friendship between her and Bumblebee, and the whole point is that it's kind of like a Big Hero 6 or How to Train Your Dragon, where you've got your main character,
or Herbie the Love Bug, which you probably haven't seen, but I watched those movies when I was a kid.
Yeah, I get the comparison. It's like a character and then the special character, who in this case is a Transformer, but it could be anything. It could be a car, it could be a dragon, could be whatever. But you've got that friendship that forms, and they stick out for each other, and they're going to protect each other, and you do a simple story, and lo and behold, Bumblebee is pretty much universally praised as the best Transformers movie.
Yeah. As being all right.
Yeah, it's not amazing by any means, but it's definitely watchable. I might try and rewatch it before we do the new one, just so I've got all of them fresh in my head for comparison's sake.
Yeah, I mean, if it is a prequel to that one or a sequel to that one.
Sequel, yeah, because it's the 90s. I think it's set this new one.
Okay, it's the 90s. All right, it makes sense. So yeah, maybe I will too. Probably not.
I don't want to promise it, but I might try and squeeze it in just for the sake of.
Maybe I'll just listen to our review while I'm driving for work or something.
Hey, that's an idea. Why not? Yeah. I'm sure there was more dumb things I wanted to bring up, but there's so many of them that there was no way I was ever going to hit on all of them.
Yes, I was actually pretty worried about going into this. I'm like, I don't know how much I really took in that film and how much I'm going to have to say, but I feel like we've been on equal understanding this whole thing. So I guess I did watch it.
Did you like the scene where they're looking for the clues to find the staff. So Vivian and Wahlberg go up to like her father's old study, and they're
No.
looking for stuff. And her mother and aunties are listening downstairs, and it sounds like they might be having very weird, rough sex. Because they're
Yes.
saying things, because there's banging and there's things falling, and then one of them says, "Go faster." Like,
Another one says, "I can't get it out."
say
I
something like
think.
that. Yeah, yeah.
I can't pull it out.
Yeah, I mean, then maybe he says something like, "Come on, just open it," or "Open up," or something. Yeah, like there's a lot of just dialogue that's meant to sound like it might be dirty.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the
And
joke.
one of them's horny and she wants to go look, and the other one say no.
Yeah, which by the way, aren't you related to this woman? Like that's a bit. I mean, it's weird anyway, but that's especially weird.
They're going to be pretty upset when they go up there and they see all the pictures have been busted
I
and
know.
everything's been broken, ripped off the walls. We get no follow up to them. That should have been the post-credit scene, like
Oh dear.
them stumbling upon their priceless antiques all ruined.
He does ask her out on a date, so maybe yeah, the mid-credit scene could have been them actually at a normal date or something. If you really wanted to do a bit.
I said post-credit. I don't know if there's a post-credit. I watched the mid-credit and assumed that was the end.
So did I. I just turned it off. Yeah.
There may have been something.
I don't think so. I don't know if any of these have had that. Maybe they have. I don't know.
I always check. I don't know why I didn't check with this one. I guess I was just done. I'm done.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I definitely felt like I'm just done when I got to the end of this. There's so many things. English Robot Butler. I couldn't believe it. It's such a stupid character.
Yeah, and the idea that it's been around forever also is so.
And everything, like I say, the biggest problem with this movie is how messy it is and how so many things it sets up then disappear. And I'm like, oh, the Decepticons are back. And like, what even happened to the Decepticons by the end? Like, did Megatron get killed or did he just run away? Like, where was he right at the very end exactly? I don't think I know. Because they weren't really.
I want to say he got stabbed, but I don't think he's dead.
Were they even involved in the final fight? I don't think.
It was there was like a one-off line. Okay, I think I remember. There was a one-off line. There's Optimus and Megatron. Megatron says we need each other or something, and then Optimus stabs him and throws him off the side of the spaceship before they go into zero G.
Okay. So he's probably
I did
around.
watch this movie.
He's around for a potential sixth movie that'll never happen. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
But it was kind of anticlimactic. Like there was one line from the line between them of like I'm your Joker and you're my Batman. It didn't really resonate with me either. So you need me or we need each other or something like that. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah,
what the line was.
it's just ringing a bell, something vague like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at the end, Optimus is all, Earth is the only place that's let us call home.
Yeah.
We will protect it. Autobots, come to Earth. Which is basically what he said at the end of the first movie as well. He's like, here, we're here. Come and hang out on Earth.
Here's our signal. If you're out there.
And that's basically it. Credits start to roll. There's
Are we done?
Quint S is there threatening to be a villain in a future movie, and that's it. Yeah, we're done. Yeah, I think we're done.
Oh my god.
There's a bunch of stupid stuff that I could probably talk about, but I think my.
Are we done with these Michael Bay Transformers movies?
Yes,
Forever.
We have a non-Michael Bay Transformers movie, but that does seem like a lesser evil.
It does. And apparently the buzz is okay, which is good.
Yeah,
It's good.
I mean, early social media reactions, like a lot of bad movies have had good positive social media buzz because, reasons.
I don't suspect it'll be as bad as anything that we've watched in the last couple of months, though.
I think that's a fair. I think that's not that's not an unrealistic expectation. I'll say that. That's not unrealistic. So, keep your expectations low. And
it may not be as good as Bumblebee, which for me was only medium good anyway. But
yeah,
that's if it's anywhere between the first one and Bumblebee, I'm okay with that.
I wonder though if I do watch Bumblebee in the next week or two, like after watching all these, I wonder how good it might feel in comparison. Like it's probably going.
That's true.
I'm probably going to come out of it being like that was a 10, baby. That was a 10.
Yeah, and you've never seen this one, so.
Yeah, as far as like ranking,
or you might just be like, I just hate these characters so much.
I mean, as far as ranking these goes, like It's probably this is still worse than the second one. I might say the fourth is felt more of a slog than this one, so this is probably middle. It's probably
That's where I'm putting it, middle.
so. I think it's either Dark of the Moon or the first one's first, and it kind of depends on like what your priority
The worst one, you mean? Yeah.
is best. No,
Dark of the Moon is best.
that's the third one.
Oh, you're just rating the sequels because I would put the first one as
No, I said
best
it.
one.
I said it's either the first one or Dark of the Moon,
Okay.
depending on your preference, right? And then, so those are one and two, whatever order you like, and then probably Last Night. And the fact that that's in third place is like an indictment of where like how bad some of these are.
The other two are just really bad. Yeah.
And then you get to Age of Extinction's in fourth place, and then last place is Revenge of the Fallen.
I'm glad you're with me on Revenge of the Fallen. I think a lot of people would put that one a bit higher because it was right after the first one, but man, it was miserable.
Yes. But
that was a life-changing experience when I saw that in the theater.
But there are parts of Last Night and Age of Extinction that are worse than Revenge of the Fallen. Like, Revenge of the Fallen is the worst one overall, but they all have their own unique extra, like, problems.
There's nothing worse than Witwicky's parents in the second film. Nothing even comes close to being that bad.
Oh, no, I don't think
that is literally the worst thing that Michael Bay has ever directed.
I don't know.
Scenes.
I think some things are in the hemisphere of it. I don't think I would say nothing else comes close because there's definitely some other really bad stuff. But at that point, we're at semantics. So I think we can rate The Last Night.
Okay. Yes. Well, now that we've done, because I agree. I think this is in the middle. So I'm gonna go with a 3.5. I don't really know. I don't remember all my ratings for all of them, but I think that's probably right. But I also feel like it deserves 3.5.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what I gave the rest of them. I think I gave like a 2 to Revenge of the Fallen. What did I give Age of Extinction? Was that like a 3? Something like that.
I don't remember.
I think I want to give this like a 3 as well. 3 feels right. 3 out of 10. Not out of 5. I want to make that clear. If this is your first episode of this show, we're rating out of 10 here, not out of 5. So...
Our ratings doubles as percentages.
Yes. So...
Because all of them would, but it's just easy because it's in tens.
Yeah. I mean, a 3 out of 5 is still a percentage. It's just you have to do a bit of math to get there.
Well, I mean, like even like a yeah, exactly.
Well, with that, we are done with these awful Michael Bay Transformer sequels.
And we're going to celebrate by doing a movie I really like.
I've never seen this movie. Next week we are doing Tron Legacy. I hope I like it half as much as you. I'm not convinced I will, but I'm going in with an optimistic mind. I
really like the film. I don't know if I would call it like a great movie, but I think it's much better than the first one. And after the watching, we watched it not too long ago. I still think this one's better, and I think if anything, you're gonna leave with a new favorite score.
Okay. Well, we'll see. That's next time on the show. Of course, I think by the time this goes out, our most recent bonus episode on Patreon should be up, which is Gamera, the Giant Monster from 1965. It's a pretty silly movie. We have a pretty silly conversation about it. It is the 49th.
It was fun. It was fun much.
It is the 49th bonus episode that we've done. So there's a whole back catalogue now that you can get for $3 a month on Patreon, plus there's bonuses of other shows. And at the $5 tier and up, you also get access to the Ace Meltdown, which is just our show that we do monthly, talking about all the different random movies we've been watching that are not sci-fi. So
we'll have one of those coming up soon.
A couple of weeks for that, yeah. So go and check all that, get some bonus content, and support the show and keep it coming. But that is us. That has been this relatively anger-filled episode.
Yes, the sun has come up in your background because we finally finished these movies. The darkness has lifted.
Yes. Yes. I may have been particularly tetchy during this one, so I'm not going to apologize. It's completely justified given the movie we're talking about, but I'm just acknowledging it. I'm acknowledging it. So that is the show. Thank you very much for joining us. We always appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction and computer. Add salsa. What's up? You got sore head there. What?
I'm not recording. I never hit record. Are you recording me as backup?
Yes.